Hey everyone, for those who don't know me, my name is Matt Grenier. I'm a Magic player, presumably like most of you. I've played pretty much for the whole life of the game. But in the last 10 years, I've focused primarily on Cube. That is, Cube playing, Cube designing, Cube theory, what you can do with a Cube, that kind of thing. Over the course of 2022, I decided to see how far and how well I could play in the Magic Online Vintage Cube. In the February season and in the June season, I took second, lost both by one trophy. Did pretty well in September, was doing well in January, December, but not going to have as much time to continue to play for the rest of the season. In the course of 2022, I did about 430 drafts and had about a 40% trophy rate. It's not the best, but I think it's pretty good, right? And over the course of that time, I developed some concepts that I think have been pretty successful in how to win at this cube. I think there's a lot of long-standing ideas that are no longer really true about this collection of cards, especially since how Magic has changed so much in the last 2 or 3 years with Modern Horizons and the difference in ways Standard is developed. So I think it's important to think about the ways the game has changed and how that reflects the strategy in Vintage Cube. In the past 6 months or year or so, people have talked a lot about their top cards in this cube, and I have done so as well. My list tends to be pretty different, if not very different, from what is the standard for this thing. Recently, my friends were asking me to update my top 50 list. The cube hasn't changed terribly much recently, but it has changed. So I want to take the opportunity at the end of the year, considering how much playing I had done, to change my top 50 list and have some kind of final document for that year's worth of playing. So I found some time on stream, and with the help of people hanging out in chat, kind of mixed and matched and ended up with what I consider more or less to be a top 50. This was an exercise in entertainment. It was fun to do, but it is a sincere effort. I'm not joking around here. I do what I say I think is true, and these power rankings are more or less what I think. That is not to say that if I did it today, I would do it exactly the same, or if I did it, tomorrow, I'd do it exactly the same. Even when I was making the list, there were changes I did ad hoc, right? When you have a system as complex as Magic, or a collection of Magic cards, there's always going to be some vagueness when you're talking about best, right? It's also relative to mix part A and part B and part C and so on, and how they relate to each other. It's too complicated for us to understand. That doesn't mean we can't try, but whatever we do is going to be ephemeral. It's of that time, and it probably won't even be the same in the future with nothing changed about the system. Magic is, at the end of the day, a game where we shuffle a deck of cards, so I think we should try to embrace variance and ambiguity and not be too steadfast in how we think about the ideas of greatness and power and so on. But it doesn't mean we can't give it a shot, right? So one thing to note about this list is I don't include any mana-fixing lands. There are lands on this list. There are very powerful lands, but I don't include anything that only fixes your mana. I'm not sure there's anything that even fixes mana at all on there, but the point is there's no duels, there's no fetches, there's no triumphs, and so on. There's two big reasons I do this. One is the power level of a land is so relative to the cards in your draft pool. I understand this is also true of every other card you draft, but there's something about lands that is particularly true, that makes this particularly true, right? Like if you're playing blue-white, having a bad lands is a completely irrelevant thing. If you have a good black card in your blue-white deck, you could try to splash it somehow, and yes, you can argue that dual lands help you splash these things, but it gets a little too convoluted in a sense. The fetch lands don't really fit this model. Fetch lands more or less, can get you any color, but I'm not sure that ranking the power level of fetch land really says too much about the power stratification of the Magic Online Vintage Cube. It just says that fetch lands are good. And yes, I understand that Moxes are good, that's why you take them, and fetches are good, that's why you take them, but it didn't seem particularly necessary. If you want to put them somewhere, I don't know, put it number 27 or something like that. To me, it doesn't really matter. The other thing to think about is that the power levels in the Magic Online Vintage Cube are pretty disparate, right? There's some cards that are extremely good, and there's some cards that are extremely bad. And there's a lot of bad cards, actually. It used to be that, if you're playing Cube or if you're drafting Cube, you would end up with enough playables. right? But playables is always relative to the format. Just because a card was playable at one point or a card is abstractly playable doesn't mean it's going to be successful within the current iteration of that format. So at the moment, in the way the cube is constructed, I think there's a fairly small pool of playables. And you're in danger of not having enough truly playable cards if you too aggressively take lands. Which means that if you pass these good cards, you might not get them, and then you might not hit the number of cards you need to truly have a good deck. That being said, of course, you always need mana fixing unless you're playing a monocolored deck of some kind. So be responsible with how you draft. If you know what colors you are, if you have a hunch what colors you are, take the lands you need and just do it. You know, sometimes you have to sacrifice a good card for a land. Sometimes you need to sacrifice mana for good cards. That's the very nature of draft, right? That's how it goes. I've had a lot of success with these ideas. I think they're probably pretty different than what you might be familiar with. They might seem silly or wrong or stupid. I get it. But this is just my approach towards it, and it's worked pretty well. So give it a shot if you can, and I hope you have fun drafting. All right, well, every streak has to end. It's 2-2-1s, which is not bad. Let's do it. So, to me, this is the obvious number one. It used to be Mox Pearl. A long time ago it was Soul Ring, but it used to be Mox Pearl. And that wasn't that long ago. That was like a year ago. Maybe a little bit longer than that, maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago, it was Mox Pearl. But I think the addition of Luris particularly makes Black Lotus the best card. So, from there, 5 Moxes. Yeah, exactly. You know, you can play Storm Black Lotus. So I think order on these doesn't matter. It's kind of whatever you want to do. But I think you can use the Moxes to be a basic kind of color tier list. And in the past, this has been my opinion of that, which is you have white, red, black, blue, and green. With this being a significant margin above everything else, and these being tighter together. But as you know, like I think Marty's really powerful, but ultimately white's really powerful. And like you're usually looking for other cards to add to white decks that you can splash somehow. So other colors can be good. I think in a way blue is the worst splash to white decks. But like I like Naya and Marty better. What you're adding with blue, white doesn't really need. Yeah, I think I have to admit to some degree that blue's more powerful, but maybe we could say this. Maybe Mitsuki Blue is like high enough to matter. So from here, it's Mana Crypt. It's really the reason. What do all these have in common? They have zero. They cost 0 mana. Easiest way to win a game is to have an explosive turn 1, and all of these allow for that to happen. It's something as simple as yeah, you might be right, Finite, about the Sapphire versus Emerald. Even an opening, like for instance, I was playing against Mono Green. This was about a year ago, and I had an opener that was 5 lands, Mox Jet, Dark Confidant. And it was like a snap keep to me, because what the hell is Mono Green going to do versus that hand? And I didn't do any math or anything. I just felt, I just felt in my heart of hearts that Bob would help me out. And so I played turn 1 Dark Confidant, and then just drew interactive spell after interactive spell and totally destroyed it. Yeah, it doesn't remember what it went bad for sure. I had to read, you know? And yeah, it was an easy game. My friend Dave later went on to do the math and figured, he looked at the deck list and found out like I was 80% to hit interactive spells in the first 2 turns, so it was fine. But my point is, you need to do something on turn 1. And this is why Soul Ring is not particularly great, because it doesn't, you just skip turn 1 when you play Soul Ring. There's going to be a lot of games where you just go land go. It's unavoidable. You don't control your opening hand, but you can set yourself up for success by having 1-mana cards and free cards to play in your opening hand, and which Soul Ring doesn't do that. That's not to say you shouldn't take Soul Ring over a lot of cards, but that's why these cards are better to me. Let's bring up this other list, and I can use it as a reference here. We'll kind of craft it as we go. See if I can look at it here. Right, for one with, yeah, exactly. Okay, so if we look at this list, I have Jit next. I think I'm ready to put Solitude over that. I think this is better than Jit. It's free again, and Jit dominates and closes out games, but Solitude, it's just the card you always want in your hand at any given circumstance. Only deck it doesn't do anything against a Storm. Even there, it could beat it could kill Baral, Electromancer, or if you get really lucky, you can nab Palinchron, right? And killing Palinchron is like a certain kind of justice. So everything that's going to be presented to you is a creature, and this beats all of them except for Progenitus. What is our approach here? These are just, I think, the top 50 best cards in the cube. I think if you go beyond what that means, it can be, if you try to overspecify what that means, it's too hard to determine. Like when I did this back with Derek and Geeky in June, the question was about Mox Pearl versus Time Walk or something. Yeah, Danny, we're doing the top 50 right now. I had a 6 streak of like 6 trophies, but now I'm in the dumpster with 2-2-1s in a row. So, Solitude, I've given many soliloquies on this card. It beats everything you can face here. So you should play it, and you should never pass this card. The only, like I said, the only cards it doesn't beat are Progenitus, and then a fully leveled Hex Drinker. And you could argue that it beats Inkwell Leviathan just by attacking. It's a lifelinker. You probably have other creatures, right? It has all the tricks you can do with Restoration Angel and Parallax Wave, Ephemerate if you feel like it. Beats Minsk? We'll get there. Yeah, it doesn't beat, I guess it doesn't beat that card. But it probably enables a victory, right? Like, you can kill Boo and then kill Minsk and probably not be at too much of a loss. In a pretty tempo parity way, at least. So, I don't know. For the same reason, I think I'm going to put Source to Plowshares next. Anyone have a favorite Swords art? This card has so many different arts, but I don't like any of them. This one is the closest to my heart, like the Swords to Plowshares from Ice Age. None of them really call to me. Same reason. This card is insultingly good versus so many strategies. Yeah, they're just effects you always want to have access to. Right? Like, there were games recently that we won because someone, like, cheated out Custody Lich, right? And you kill with no mana and the trigger on the stack for ETB, you can Solitude the Custody Lich, and then everything's all hunky-dory. The other night, someone cast Kogla, and we Swords it in response to the fight trigger. So that might be true. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think ultimately I'm a data science skeptic, but it's hard to be that way because there's objective truth behind it, but there's always some take like fly in the ointment with objective truth. We'll just put this card next. I don't actually own this card. Of all the cards here for my own cube, this is one of the first cards we banished to the Shadow Realm. Parallax Wave, we'll get there. We'll get there. Jit's better. This card will save you from almost every situation you can imagine. One time, someone Dark Depths me, put Merit Lage in play, and I had 3 Lingering Souls tokens and Jit, and I was like, this game's winnable. It's like one of the important things about these cards is that they let you play from a mana deficit. And while Jit's kind of expensive to get going, once it's going, you have access to game effects without spending mana. And it can, if you get stuck, which you should probably play more lands, that's what we're learning this season, but if you get stuck, then Jit's going to let you continue to control the game without spending any mana. And that's critical because you need to continue to develop your board. And similarly, like there are a lot of decks that fold to 1 hit from this card. So against green decks, you could just annihilate their elves. Against red decks, you can gain life. You could do things like kill Hazoret, which is important. Keep theory. So there's a category of card that stops your opponent from playing the game, and this is the best of those cards. It's even pretty good against the non-creature decks, just because it does a lot of damage. A long time ago, like 10 years ago, it used to be kind of conventional theory that Jit wasn't that powerful because it's not good against these slower controlling decks. There is an element of truth to that, but it still does, it still does a good amount of damage pretty quickly. And a lot of these combo decks or control decks, they do play some kind of creatures. And as we move more to more and more planeswalkers, which is one of the trends we'll see as we talk about Cube, then the ability to turn a 1/1 token into a card that can kill a planeswalker is very valuable. So Jit is an equipment that, it being +4/+4, is, it helps turn anything into something that can kill planeswalker. A lot of these cards that I value extremely highly will be about board control, because I believe if you control the board, you'll win the game. And the first step of board control is controlling creatures. And once you control creatures, your opponent can't play planeswalkers. Once they can't play planeswalkers, they can't get a foothold on the game anymore. Once they can't deploy on the board, then you win. There are combo decks that beat this theory, but the vast majority of decks you play against are not those decks. And even those decks play some element of board presence that you can fight against with these cards. So that's why these cards are so high. So what do I have next? How do we feel about Ragavan these days? Okay, no, back up. Reanimate. I think Reanimate has to be this high. Reanimate's the best black card. In addition to board control, the other premium quality for a card is, can this card take you from being behind to being ahead? And Reanimate is channel and mind control, like in the same card. So you can kill their creature, take it. You can discard a card, reanimate it. Like the obvious combo is Entomb with Grizzlebrand or Archon of Cruelty and Reanimate. But that's the floor of this card. If you reanimate Ragavan, that's great. If you Dothy Voidwalker, like think about the combos you can do. Like you can Voidwalker, cast their Time Walk, reanimate, you Voidwalker sack, pick Time Walk, reanimate Voidwalker, cast the Time Walk, do it. Yeah. So like you should always play this card in any black deck, no matter what, and it's the card you want the most because it will take you from a losing position to a winning position, and that's incredibly important. You need to have your insurance policies. You need to have your ability to come back from behind. So. Reanimate. This is not a reanimator card. This is simply the best black card. So the second best and very close is Thoughtseize, right? We need to stop our opponent from playing their game plan. In a black deck, particularly, you lack 1-drops. So you need to do something on turn 1. That's your goal. And you need to, if you can't play a creature, if you can't commit to the board in some way, you need to stop your opponent from doing that. And this will also stop them from comboing in some way. We all know how tilting Thoughtseize is to play against. Whenever someone plays a swamp against you, it's like, come on, man, my hand's so good. But sometimes they have it. And if they give a swamp pass, it's the greatest feeling in the world. That way, your hand's safe. The life loss is more and more relevant every year, but that's you just got to take the lumps you can. So I don't think we have to talk about Thoughtseize that much. It's incredibly good. Would you pick Thoughtseize over Jailer? Yes. I think one of the ways in which Cube has changed in the last 10 years is that it used to be that you'd have like weird decks that were really conglomerated around the 3 and the 4 mana slot. And you could, and because there was such a dearth of playable 1 and 2 mana cards, you had to play Signets. And that's why the Signet Legacy exists, because like the whole game plan was to play like Dimir Signet into Jace the Mind Sculptor and win through just having Jason play because the 1 and the 2 mana spells were so bad. So you had these decks that were all about the middle. The information is very important. You had these decks that were all about playing these 4 mana cards, and your curves were really weird. You had like Preordain, Duress, maybe Ponder, Brainstorm, Signets, and then 4 mana Planeswalkers. That's how the good decks. Those are the best decks. Now, if you talk to some people, they would argue that White Weenie has always been the best deck, but that's like one person I know, that's not the case anymore. Like, we have 10 years of cards since then, and you can have decks, Cooper. You can have decks that that literally scale to have the same exact curve as a constructed deck does. So you should aspire to have, 8 1-mana cards in your deck and 6 2-mana cards. And it will look like a modern deck. It will look like, to a degree, like a legacy deck. Now, not every deck's going to look like that, right? But that's why these cheap cards are so important. Because you can have these opening hands that look like a modern hand, right? And it's if you're stuck playing a game that's trying to play to turn 4 without doing anything, then you're not going to win. So where do we go from here? If I have Ragavan and Lelia above Sol Ring, would I still say that? Probably. So let's talk about Ragavan. It's our favorite little monkey pal. So the more people play like it's 2013, the better Ragavan is. The more people play like it's 2022, the worse Ragavan is. You should expect people to not play like it's today because they don't, right? And so as a result of that, Ragavan is very highly rated. So this kind of comes back to Finite's point of, is this a list of power that's contextual in the sense of the way you expect to play against, or is it a list of power in the abstract sense of what's the best card? Maybe it's impossible to divorce these two things, but in the world in which there's like a 30% chance that someone's not going to play a creature on turn 1 or 2, or they won't play a removal spell, the number of free wins you can get just by casting Ragavan is really high, right? It's a 1 mana commitment. If it dies, it's like, that's fine. It's dead. I spent 1 mana on that. I don't think this card is the nemesis that everyone thinks it is, but it's very good. On the other hand, if you are expecting people to play a lot of green decks or people to play a lot of, good decks, then Ragavan goes down significantly. I'm not even sure it fits in the top 50 at that point, other than the fact that the commitment is so extremely low. So given that the commitment's so low and the upside is so high, then it's hard not to put this high. And Lelia. But I put Lelia over Soul Ring still. I don't own this card anymore. No. Yeah, so Fable's interesting. Let's get Fable in the conversation here. Back in September, I was talking with some friends of mine about these two cards, Lelia versus Fable. And the consensus they had was that Fable was better than Lelia because it plays better from behind. I don't really know if I agree. Oh! Okay, yeah, let's get Minskin Boo in here. Minskin Boo. I'll have to pull up the list so I don't stop forgetting cards here. The thing about Lelia is Black Lotus Lelia is a winning combination. And Black Lotus Fable is really cool, but frequently doesn't win the game in the same way. So I think... And then this guy, huh? How do we rate him? We go like this. And then if so, where does Soul Ring go? Mountain Crypt, yeah. I think I would go like this. But maybe like this. It's interesting. So the reason I put Soul Ring higher here is because look at these Naya decks I've been playing, right? Like you have Showdown, Escape, and Minsk as the huge card advantage engines. And it's those cards really love Soul Ring because they cost 4 and 5 mana, right? And so having Soul Ring means that it's so much easier to cast those cards. And that moves you into being in the mid-game portion of the conversation. So I think we could reasonably put Soul Ring up here. The big drawback of Soul Ring is it's turn 1, it's not good. And turn 2, it's not good. And the thing, turn 2, it can be okay. But like, the thing with Soul Ring is if your deck is looking like a constructed deck, and the fact that it has 7 or 8 1-mana spells and 6 2-mana spells, how many colorless pips do you have? It's probably not a lot. I've had a lot of games where I cast Soul Ring and struggle to use the mana. Now, you could make the same argument for Mana Crypt, but again, Mountain Mana Crypt Lelia. That's exactly right. Yeah. So Mountain Mana Crypt Lelia is just a turn 1 opening. Like the difference between turn 1 and turn 2 is so huge. Your time, the signets become good if you have. I don't think so, but the thing I've been thinking about recently is Minskin Boo. I've played a Gruul Signet and a Boros Signet because of Minskin Boo. I think it's possible we overrate Minskin Boo slightly, but man, that card is stupid, huh? So I think I want to add a card in here. Is there any other recent additions? I want to, before I keep going, I don't know, Skull Clamp? Okay. Strat, this is top 50 cards in the cube. This is just however you want to interpret that. This is top 50 cards in the cube. These aren't Shieldry, thank you. These aren't in any way ranked at the moment. I'm just trying to think of cards that aren't on my list here that were added. Anything else added? Lauren, we could consider that. What else was in the changelog? Here, let me go pull it up. I have an interesting one, actually. Let's put that over here for a second. And then maybe this guy. He's here. I don't know where I'm going to put those yet, but it's an interesting... Yeah. So these are the cards that were added recently that are not on my list that I think deserve to be into consideration. And then let's do Cube Cobra. See if they have the current list here. 8th. Anything? Okay, looking through the list real quick. I don't have this on my top 50 and it's worth talking about. Everyone's favorite giant. Again, these are not ranked in any way at the moment. They're just cards that I haven't thought about. I think that about sums it up. Oh, I think I have Skyclave in this list, so look at that's... No, I don't? Okay. Einvar, we're working on top 50 cards of MTGO Vintage. So I want to put Skull Clamp here, which is a little bit of a different ranking than I had before. I want to put it here, I think. How did Fable end up above Lelia? I think it's in the end a little more powerful. I don't know. Actual Vintage? I've had decks where I thought, like, man, this would be good at Vintage, and Geeky's like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, Skullclamp is really good, right? It draws you a lot of cards. I think if you take the 3 basic strengths of a deck, you have like threat, tempo, and card advantage. Card advantage is maybe the least important here, but it's still important. And Skullclamp is one of the best, is maybe the best card advantage engine on the cube. It draws so many cards, right? This came down to the other day, like I was looking for Parallax Wave, and it was literally the last card in my deck. And I was able to draw my entire deck to find it because I had Skull Clamp and a couple of things. Aetherfowl's not in the cube. I don't like Stoneforge, but I also don't like Demonic Tooth. So, of course, I lost the game because I didn't have enough turns to win after Parallax Wave. But regardless, a lot of the decks I like to build are aggressive, kind of, but also can draw their entire contents of its deck. And one of the reasons is that I value Skullclamp highly. So Skullclamp is, it's the way you're going to draw the most cards you can. Is Fable really this high? Man, it's so good. Yeah, but Squire's not really going to get you anywhere either. Seems really high on Fable. I might end up agreeing with you. We'll put Lelia right there. It's hard to underrate Fable, though. Squire with Chit. So here's my position on tutors. Cards are good because of their mana cost in relation to their effect, and adding mana to their mana cost makes them worse. Right? That's a very obvious truism, but which is to say that you shouldn't the cards that are really really good become not good at all if you add mana to their mana cost. So while Stoneforge does it, you're essentially skipping a turn to get there. And we want to always be pressing our advantage. We don't want to be in a position where we are setting up to be advantage later. We want to be at advantage right now. So I don't really believe in setup in that sense. I suppose if you know me on a personal level, I'm not very good at planning or thinking about the future, which is maybe why I'm successful in a sense here to a degree. And then I also fall apart because I'm not great at long-term strategy in a game. So what else do I have on here? Archon of Cruelty. I put this card so high because if you don't have this card and you're playing Reanimator, don't play your deck. Change your deck and do something else, but you need this card. Because if you're reanimating Grave Titan or whatever, that might win sometimes. But you are putting way too many resources together to put a good creature in play that you could probably just cast with regular plans. But Archon of Cruelty is the exception. This card is so stupid and wins you the game almost immediately. If you Entomb reanimate this card, aces. If you Entomb reanimate Gristlebrand and then they Swords to Plowshares it, you might say I draw 7, but that was turn 2. Do you really need 12 cards in your hand on turn 2? You have to discard them anyway. So if you are playing Reanimator, just got to answer with the Metamorph. Hell yeah. If you don't have this card, change plans quickly. Iona's frustrating, but to me, that's the mark of a bad Reanimator deck. I don't want to go too much into deck strategy. This is, if I was playing with all you guys, this is what I would do. Does that answer your question, or are you not a decent player? No, if this is what I would, in the most abstract sense, this is how I would rate my top cards. Oh, God, it's all right. I love Strat. He's a cool guy. Yes, I would pass it without Seize. This is for the MTGO Vintage Cube. Mana Crypt is at least better than Sapphire? Man, that showed him on with the beats. He's probably right. I have to defer to him. He won last season. He has the ultimate veto power. In my cube, not to bring up, that's not really part of the conversation, but Sol Ring is very good. And it belongs up here. But in this cube, Sol Ring's not very good. That has to do with the kinds of artifacts that are in it. Okay, well. Man, I'm too impressionable. So, where do we put Archon here? Put Archon here. Archon here. The whole thing with Archon that's so important is that it's actually more easy to cast than you could imagine. But like I said, I think it's fundamental. If you don't have this card, don't play Reanimator. And if you if like you're in, the reason I have it so highly is because even if you don't want to play Reanimator, which I don't think it's a good deck, then taking this card early lets you have that opportunity. But also in a black mid-range deck, you can just cast it. Like you will get to 8 lands. If you've seen the way these games play, you will slow the game down enough through interaction, and you'll get enough cards to get to 8 mana, and then you'll just hardcast Arcana Cruelty. So you don't really have to do a ton of work for it, but also if you want to be responsible and keep your options open as far as the draft, you could take Archon very highly, and then feel free to just throw it away. Because, okay, well, let me talk about that a little bit, which is, there are 2 Reanimator decks you can play in this cube. There's the one that everyone builds, which is Blue-Black Reanimator. That deck, I mean, look at the top cards here, right? This card, well, Q. This card, and this card. Single-handedly beat that deck. If you can cast Solitude or Swords to Plowshares, or Path to Exile, or Oust, or Palace Jail, or Parallax Wave, you'll beat every classic Reanimator deck, because they don't have an A plan. They don't have a fair plan. Say. About Iona, Iona's tilting, but I don't think it's really good. But when this came up last night, sometimes you should be prepared to pitch cast Solitude in the expectation of Exhume. Yeah, there are ways to beat Iona even in mono white, whether Dismember or Dam, or we did it the other night where we had Shriekmaw, Karakas. Karakas is a good one. But what are we talking about? Archon Reanimator. Okay, so the other Reanimator deck, the one you should build if you want to play Reanimator, is Rakdos. And what that deck looks like is it looks like Rakdos aggro, but it has Entomb, Reanimate, and Archon in it, and that's it. I used to have, let me see if I can find it. Okay, so you guys have origin stories? I have a lot of them. I have many people. But this is my Rakdos origin story right here, this deck. This is from about 2 years ago at this point. Hey, maximize. Oh, come on. It can't be this hard. So, yeah, you can also attack through Iona. Iona doesn't actually do anything, right? It just stops your opponent from playing the game. So here's what happened this draft. I was drafting mono red, but early on, I took Entomb and Reanimate and had Grizzlebrand. This is before Modern Horizons 2. And I have Vanifar. I was looking at my pool and I was like, I'm mono red, and clearly I could have built a mono red deck with these cards. But then I had a couple lands here. Like I had these 2 lands, and I had Entomb and Reanimate and Grizzlebrand, and I was like, list on the bottom, that's my old top 50. We're working on a new one. And I had this deck, and I was like, I could splash Dark Confidant. And then I thought, man, how crazy would it be to play Entomb, Reanimate, and Grizzlebrand? Hey, thanks for following. And so, like, on a lark, I did it. And the second I went, like, 1-drop, 2-drop, Entomb, Reanimate, Grizzlebrand, I was like, oh, it was eye-opening. Because everything that the deck was weak to, like, Grizzlebrand laughs in the face of, right? And from there, I realized, okay, what if I, instead of building the Mirror Reanimator, what if I were to build an aggro deck. And then if you look at the nature of red cards now, like you have Seasoned Pyromancer, you have Fable the Mirror Breaker, a lot of them loot, right? Even if you have to play Ready or something, like the 4-mana Ready. Don't do that. It's a bad card, but like maybe you can. A lot of them loot. And then Reanimate, as we said, Reanimate's already the best black card, right? So maybe you toss in a Necromancy. Necromancy's a bad card, but sometimes you have to. Maybe you have an Animate Dead, and all of a sudden now your Rakdos deck, your mono red deck, has no weakness, right? And you have to think about, like, from the position of your opponent, if I'm going 1-drop, 2-drop, they're adjusting their game plan to beat these cheap creatures. And then if you end step in Tomb and get Archon of Cruelty in play, they're dead. Everything they've been trying to set up to do to beat you will not beat the Archon. And so it's really important, one, to have a powerful A plan. It is narrow, but it's extraordinarily powerful. So it's on a power level, I think, that is very notable to take. And to me, while the goal of your decks is to have a flawless fair plan that can win from zero position. And so if you think about like Splinter Twin, that's what Splinter Twin does. I don't like to play Splinter Twin personally, but that's why this deck is strong. Is because it has a good A fair plan, and then when its back is against the wall, I can still just kill you with Splinter Twin. Now, a lot of the decks I play on this cube don't have that kind of opportunity, but Rakdos and Reanimator does with Archon. So it's really good to have an excellent A plan and then some twisted over the top unfair plan that you like sneak in. And Archon it's easy enough to get into play with a couple other cards we'll talk about shortly, that I think it's worth picking very highly because it's so unique, right? There's nothing else, and there's no other card in the cube that does what it does. Like Grave Titan kind of does it, but this card, if it comes into play, you probably win. If it attacks, you definitely win. And that's why I like full Archon of Cruelty. It's important to know when a card is so unique that there's nothing that can replicate it. All of these cards, as powerful as they are, like all of these 7 cards here are more or less the same card. And then these 2 are more or less the same card. So there's some redundancy. There's not really redundancy with Archon of Cruelty. So you take it that highly because it's so unique, right? There's nothing else that's going to do what it does. How do you guys feel about Fury? It's ruining Modern, huh? There's way too many cards called Fury. Mana Drain? No. I think I would do this. Put Fury here. Any Archon Ephemerators in the chat? Oh, that's living the dream. Yeah, Fury is good for the same reasons that Solitude is good. One of the reasons that Reanimate is so high for me is because of the MH2 elementals, Solitude and Fury in particular. Like the opening line of Pitch Cast Solitude Reanimate, Pitch Cast Grief Reanimate, Pitch Cast Fury Reanimate, or is that's going to win the game a lot of the time. So Fury, I think it's significantly worse than Solitude, which is why it's lower on this list, right? But it does, it does get the job done. There's a lot of good Planeswalkers. It's good against Minskin Boo. It's a really powerful threat. Then, yeah. Play this card, it's good. Okay, what's next? Take this card. Guy's Cradle. There have been a couple times I haven't played this season, but don't be afraid. I think this is the old strats lesson. It's like, don't be afraid of playing Guy's Cradle. If it's your 18th or 19th land, it's probably worth it. Your best turns you can imagine all revolve around this card. Because a lot of what you're going to be doing is drawing a ton of cards. And you need mana to cast them. And mana is the most important resource in the Vintage Cube, and this gives you a lot of it. You can think of Cradle is so OP. Yeah, and it's not a green card. It's good in any deck. Yeah. Let's put, I think Cradle is important enough to put here. Cradle is how we're going to cast Archon in a lot of these decks. Cradle is how we're going to churn through our deck with Skull Clamp. Cradle is how we're going to play 4 cards off of Escape to the Wilds. Like, it just does so much, and you don't really need to be playing green to play this card. You also don't need to have maximum number of mana elves to play this card. You just need to be playing creatures. Yeah, just shenanigans. There's also, like, one of the cards that you've seen me play a lot recently is Retrofitter Foundry and Gaia's Cradle. And Retrofitter Foundry is really powerful together. There's a whole category of deck that is Gaia's Cradle plus Delirian Academy. I don't think Academy is in the conversation for top 50 because of the way the artifacts exist in this cube. It's not supported. But Cradle is. All the best cards are creatures, other than these high premium interactive cards we know. And Cradle pays you off for winning. And there is something to be said for, like, if they wrath you, then you lose all your mana. It does happen, but you gotta take those beats, you know? I don't like Ancient Tomb anymore, man. I'm not about taking 6 damage for 6 mana. Alright, well, what's next? What do I have here? The old Palace Jailer? Let's make some swaps here. Let's do this. I think Parallax Wave is better than Fable. The reason to take Fable over Parallax Wave is no one's going to take Parallax Wave. This card is one of them. It is, as Finite has pointed out, it is the most underrated card in the cube. It does anything and everything. It's the White Cryptic command. Your opponent can't block for 3 turns. All your creatures are protected forever. They can't upheaval you. They can't Splinter Twin you. They can't sneak attack you. All your value creatures are doubled. If you have Containment Priest, they die. If you have Solitude, you might have seen me do this a couple times, but upkeep, you have 1 counter on Parallax Wave, pitch cast Solitude, target Solitude with Parallax Wave, tuck it, comes back, it kills another thing. Yeah, I do table it all the time, and it doesn't make any sense. And the more you play with Parallax Wave, the more you'll see the weird, unique things you can do with this card. It kills all their tokens. It's impossible to play against. And God forbid they Flicker Wisp it, because then you're in for a long, bad time. So I have Palace Jailer this high. I'm not going to put Palace Jailer that high. I'll kind of go into why when we get to Palace Jailer. This guy? Is Grist better than Fable? Probably. So if all the threats that you're going to be facing are creatures and planeswalkers, this guy kills all of them for 3 mana, and also is like a really obnoxious board presence, can be reanimated with Reanimate, cannot be reanimated with Animate Dead. It does not work. If you have Recurring Nightmare, which is a card that I do have on this list. I like Grist more than Oko. I don't have Oko in my top 50, so yes. This is, other than Minskin Beer, this is the best Planeswalker to me. It does everything you want a card to do. It is admittedly quite slow, but I highly prioritize cards that stop your opponent from playing the game, and this is one of them. It's extremely difficult to beat Grist. There is Hornet Queen, right? So you can like mill Hornet Queen and get a bonus. That'd be kind of cool. It does fuel your graveyard, which doesn't matter that much in this queue, but you do have access to black cards because you're playing Grist, so you can play Reanimate, Reanimate Dead, and so on to get this back. It is extraordinary with Recurring Nightmare. So I guess at this point we should add a blue card. Hornet Queen, the Green Wrath of God, yeah. Is Fable better than Ancestral Recall? Probably. You know, I've said a lot about Ancestral Recall before, but is all you want to do draw 3 cards? That's all you want to do. You came here to play with the best cards, and all you want to do is draw 3 of them. You could stop your opponent from playing the game. You can kill them, and instead of doing any of that, you just want to draw cards. I get it. The mystery of what's on top of your deck can be quite tantalizing, and therefore, there's some payoff to it. But this card's not that good. It does what it says, and that's a good, powerful effect. The real drawback is you have to be playing islands, and that's a problem. Blue struggles to interact with the board. Its answers are all extremely time sensitive. All of Blue's best answers require you to have mana up and for your opponent to play into them. If you're, as a general rule, if your opponent goes island to island and just passes, just don't cast a spell, right? Just don't walk into their mana drain. Because if you've built your deck like we're talking about, where you have so many 1s and 2s, you either don't have to play into it, or you just like sucker out the mana drain with a 1-mana card. They have to mana drain the Ragavan, right? And all of a sudden now mana drain is like not even that good. Where you set yourself up for failure is if you build a deck with 4s and 5s, and therefore you have to walk. Still have Time Walker in these cards? Yeah, sure. Then set yourself up for failure by 4s and 5s and having to walk into Time Walk. Wait, not Time Walk, Mana Drain. So, yeah, Recall's good. There's this, this is 24. That's really high, right? That's in the top 2% of the cube, 5% of the cube, about 5% of the cube. But it doesn't do what you need to do, which is stop your opponent from playing the game and kill them. Flash for a Soul Fable. I probably have done so. I don't know. Probably not, but maybe. A wood for a Time Walk? Well, I don't know. I was being cheeky, I guess. There are better card draw spells than Ancestral. It's just the cheapest one. I think I agree with this. This card shouldn't be in the cube. I feel that about a lot of cards. I feel like this card shouldn't be in the cube, but this card, 100%, should not be in the cube. Something like 30% of the best creatures are legends. And for the low cost of tapping a land, you can make sure your opponent never casts them. Also, you can protect all of your best cards. The number of times I've lost my mind because my opponent played a land. Yeah, opposed to hate cards. Yeah, I don't like binary gameplay patterns. I want, like I said, I want fist fights and not shootouts. Right? I want us to have a knockdown fight where it goes to the last breath rather than one of us just killing the other person right away. I get the kind of tense. I'm tier listing, yeah. What's up, Jackson? I understand the tension of the shootout, right? Like the pistols at dawn kind of thing. But I find it to be very frustrating from a gameplay perspective. And there's no arc, there's no story. There's only before and after. You guys read comics at all? I think comics are really good at describing before and after because it's such a static. It's like a sequence of static images, whereas a movie. Finite. I've already gone off about 3 hours with Finite, and in a movie, there's a smooth arc of motion. Yeah, Schwartz. That's exactly why Caracas is so high, right? Yeah, you're fine. You could like that. Cool. Anyway, we're talking about binary gameplay patterns. I don't like them because it's so anticlimactic. Get my retrofitter there. It's on the list. I play it all the time, but it's not that good. I want a beginning, middle, and end. Narrative is very important to me. Council's Judgment? What a boring fucking card. Ryan Overturf posted on Twitter about Bob. And basically talking about what is your curve and considerations to play Dark Confidant, so on. And I can't conceive of a deck that has swamps in it that's not playing Dark Confidant. That's just antithetical to who I am. So this card used to be considered really bad, actually, in Cube a long time ago. Part of that's because you're moving more towards 4 mana cards and 5 mana cards being the thing, and then like black wasn't very good. But now, like the 2-drop spot is not hotly contested because there's not a lot of great 2s. So it's important to take the better 2s. That's why I like Blood Tithe Harvester, for instance. I will take very highly, even though it's worse than other cards. Because if you look at the spread of mana curves, you'll see that like it's really easy to end up with too many 3 mana cards, and it's really hard to get enough 2 mana cards. So you can you have to take the 2s when you can. And even if you look at this list so far, there's not a single 2 mana card. This isn't really a 2 mana card. So this is the first 2-drop we see. And don't worry about, I've lost games, but we're talking about like games I could count on one hand. I've lost games to Dark Confidant. There's the games I can win because of Dark Confidant are higher. I mentioned earlier that opener that was 5 lands, Mox Jet, Dark Confidant, and soundly won that game. Council's Judgment. Someone mentioned they like Apparition better than Judgment. I get it, but this is the best answer card in the cube, even if it's the clunkiest. And one of the things about drafting this way is that you'll lose your mind to cards like Progenitus because they do end up kind of being trumps to the strategy. And if you absolutely don't want to lose to them, you can play Council's Judgment. It does everything. Like there's something it doesn't kill, literally in the text. This card doesn't follow the rules of Magic for some reason. So it beats all hexproof and shroud things, and also it kills Iona. Yeah, I know. That's why you play Dam. So it kills Leovold without them drawing a card. I just made a comment, but if you don't know, this is kind of an important piece of information if you want to jam mono white all of the time. It's fairly easy to lose to Iona. So if you anticipate that happening, you can draft Dam. Because you can cast Dam in your mono white deck and it's a black spell and it kills Iona. It might not win you the game, but you definitely won't continue to lose at that point in time. So there's some other cards here I'm going to put in. What's your favorite lightning bolt? The OG? Okay, let's be reasonable human beings and put Time Walk over Council's Judgment. I would probably take Dark Confidant over Time Walk. It's just who I am. Over Recall? Yeah. All right, cool. Bam, done. Perfect. I think this card's fine. What? You wanted me to put Time Walk higher? Is that what you were saying? You didn't expect me to drop Recall as a result of that comment? You consider Judgment over Recall? Recall must be better than Time Walk? Maybe. Time Walk over Lotus. Get out of here. This gives you 3 mana. This only gives you 2. I have to consider fun. Okay, here's the thing. I don't find losing fun. I find losing very frustrating. So there's no amount of fun deck that will make me have fun if I'm losing. Sure. I don't think Time Walk has this unique quality where it will win games that no other card will win. But a lot of the time, it doesn't really do that much. Now, I've won games where I like my opponent Time Walk 3 times because their deck is full of trash cards. Arguably, you could say they didn't play trash cards; they'd be in a better position. 0 mana Explorer. Yeah. This card's free, right? It's a free land drop. It's really good. I don't like Time Walk decks. That's what it comes down to. I don't like Time Walk decks in this cube. I don't want to play Eternal Witness. I don't want to play Regrowth. I don't like those cards. If we start talking about Tameo Collector of Tales, then okay, well, I'll highly pick a Time Walk if that card's in the cube, but not in this cube. Time Walk doesn't change your position in the game. And frequently, like, yeah, you can burn a Time Walk just to put an extra land in play and get free mana, and that's good, but it's not that good. So that's why I don't think it's that high to me. Time Walk Authors is pretty good, but like, they're already at a pretty good spot at that point. Again, this is card number 26, right? Well, 26 out of 540 is pretty damn good. I just don't think it's better than any of these cards. Lightning Bolt? Lightning Bolt? You guys know the flavor text of the M10 Lightning Bolt? Good. Sparkmate Shriek calling on the rage of the storms of his youth. For like over a decade, Magic players were forbidden from casting Lightning Bolt, the greatest Magic card in existence. And then all of a sudden, it came back. And then 2 years later, it was gone again, forever. I think they should put Lightning Bolt in Standard. Lightning Bolt is of this quality of perfect Magic cards. There's Lightning Bolt, Counterspell, there's Duress. They're perfect. What more could you want? Should it be this high? I've drafted this vintage. Do you mean my vintage cube? The threats in Standard are so insane. The fact that Lightning Bolt's not legal is kind of crazy to me. You have to play with Lightning Strike, a card that's awful. When they're playing Fable, the Mirror Breaker? You mean, have I drafted Strangles? Yeah, Strangle ain't no Lightning Bolt. No, I don't have a desire. I mean, I like this one as like a sport, essentially. That's not something I'm itching to play. Did I put Lightning Bolt this highly? Probably not. I've been accused about this card because, like, it is pretty replaceable. But it's the key to all of your red decks. Every red deck wants this Lightning Bolt. Okay, let's go back. So we'll get to the Lightning Bolt. I guess I don't think it's actually that high. couple other cards here. Torch. The Jordan, what is Spellcrawler doing? That's a good question. I think it might be really, really. It was part of what was added this season, so therefore I wanted to not forget about it. But I actually think Spellcrawler could be insanely good. Because it does what these blue-white deck wants to do, and also is a creature. Let's go like, let's do some little maneuvering here. What's your favorite duress? Yeah, there's a Sagas in here. Again, these aren't in order at the moment. Chooses the oldest one possible. I like a lot of duresses actually. I like the new Innistrad one. I think it's pretty cool. Mitzkabu is pretty low, yeah. Anything else I want to keep in mind here? He's doing a lot of that right now, isn't he? All right. This is enough cards. This is over 50, and I think this is all the ones that I want to. Yeah. There are cards that are not in the top 50 that require special consideration. Luris is one of them. You have Black Lotus, you need to take Luris above all else. Luris is like it's a fine card on its own. It's not great. And this is John Cage. It is. Okay, where were we? I think Lightning Bolt has to be somewhat high, right? Should I turn me up or music? Sure. You guys like John Cage? I think he's underappreciated. Music is quite nice, actually. Anyway, Shieldred, man, it might be one of the best black cards, hence being number 5 on this list of black cards. It's very hard to kill. It kills anything because it has Death Touch. It saves your ass by gaining life. And God forbid you pair with a Time Twister. Time Twister, Wheel, Time Spiral. They just kill your opponent. They stop your opponent from getting out of the game. Like the major comeback mechanism in Magic is drawing cards. That's why Narset is kind of good, right? But also, like, Shieldred, there's almost a way in which Shieldred is more punishing than Narset, right? Like, they get the cards, but they just die rather than they can't get the cards. Hold on, go back. Chronos Quartet. I think you have to put Lightning Bolt somewhat highly because there's no better red removal spell that's not Fury, and you need them. And so it has to be a high consideration if you're considering playing red that you have to take Lightning Bolt. There is Burst Lightning, right? They took out Firebolt. Firebolt's good. They took it out. Then there's Chain Lightning, and Chain Lightning is so much worse than Lightning Bolt, but it's still fine. So maybe Lightning Bolt arbitrarily is too high, but there are 5 colors in Magic, and you have to play one of them. Do you? But if you end up playing red, you need Lightning Bolt, and you'll be worse for wear without it. Is it better than Pest Infestation, though? No, it's not. Okay, I'm skipping cards here. So Chandra, this is the best mana rock in the cube. It also kills your opponent. It's card advantage card. There's a lot of games where Chandra doesn't really do anything other than win. It's a very deceptive card in that respect, because its effects frequently don't really do anything. But then all of a sudden your opponent's at 10 life and they die, or ultimate it, or you get the extra mana you need. You know, other than Tybalt, this is the first 2 mana Planeswalker. That's not true. Garruk is the first 2 mana Planeswalker. But this immediately pays for itself, so it's a removal spell. Yeah, exactly. Get a 2-for-1 out of it. It's fine. So it's a key to any good red mid-range deck. Any mono red deck wants this card. Respect for W6? No, not in this cube. Remember that, again, you're going to be playing a color, so you need to have the best cards in that color. And so if you find yourself in the position where red is open, you can use this as a signal to take... There's not enough payoff for red and 6 in this cube. That's my thought on it. So if you find yourself in a position of playing red, then you really, really want this card, because it's one of the best red cards. It is pretty good against mono white. It's actually, red and 6 does kind of wreck my decks a lot of the time. I'm a big 2-1 stand. No, I don't think Oko's that good. This card is not real. This is not a real Magic card. It's among the category of Minsk and Boo. If you've not cast this card before, I'm not sure you understand how ridiculous this card is. This invalidates artifacts as a strategy. It certainly invalidates any kind of enchantments you could do. This is up to X targets, so if there are no targets, you can just tap out and make a bunch of 1/1s. It's double X. It's X target artifacts, but you get double X pests. Like pests gain you life. You ever get 2 artifacts from this thing, it's like pretty much game over. And a lot of decks, I mean, if they're playing Signets, it's fine. But a lot of decks, it's just too much of a mana swing, right? Like, you are effectively deploying X, like a kind of a secure the waste, but also negating 4 of their mana spent, or maybe 6 or 8 of their mana spent. It's too good. And then if you happen to play this and have Guy's Cradle in play, this card's basically free. So it's critical. The one thing to note about this card is if they can get rid of the artifacts, all of your targets before the resolution of the spell, you won't get the tokens. So you do have to make sure that you won't be blown out, in a sense, by them removing their artifacts. So that means don't target treasure with this. Again, it's up to, so you don't need to target anything. But this card is always worth splashing for as a single green. In a better world, this card would be like Drain Life, where you have to spend green mana. Exactly, yeah. Well, and the other cards on here, like Skull Clamp is so high, right? So like we have Guy's Cradle and Skull Clamp. All of a sudden, like not only are you getting massive advantage off of their side, but now you're fueling your other powerful cards. You can hold Jit. Yeah, you could, if you don't, you can get rid of the treasures, but you just got to be careful not to only target treasure. So what's important about Pest Infestation is that, one, it's the second green card on this list. Yeah, Grist is very high. I guess Minsk is up here. Minsk and Grist, but those are like Jund cards, right? Yeah, no problem, Snow. Then Pest Infestation is the first mono green card on this list. Because it's so highly splashable, if you're looking at a pack and see something that doesn't really call to you, and there's a green land that's in your color, say your Boros, right? And you see Savannah, take the Savannah. You see Razorverge, take the Razorverge thicket. If you see Copperline Gorge, if you do this 2 or 3 times, you are setting yourself up to randomly get you randomly just get this card, right? And then all of a sudden, now, man, you can cast Pest Infestation, and you have the best artifact right here. Yeah, it also does give you outs to Minsk or Escape to the Wilds. These 3 cards. If you're playing some kind, like red's really good, and so if you have all these cards to splash green mana, Buck's table, yeah. You do set. The thing is, you set people up to have the nuts, right, with the blue cards, and then you still beat them anyway. That's some stuff other than blue. I did it on Questing Beast, right? That was pretty good. Bone Crusher, Scourge of Standard. This guy. Right. This is like whenever you open have your opening hand and just look at this card, people like lose their mind about companions. I think the companion mechanic is like intensely overrated. I don't think a free card's that big of a deal. Your whole deck is giving you free cards, right? Like all of your good cards generate you card advantage. Getting 1 ghost card, who cares? Your whole deck's already doing that. Getting free mana, that's a different story. So what the hell am I talking about? Bone Crusher Giant. Anyways, this is basically companion. Except you don't have to do some dumb restriction. Yeah, exactly, to Jordan. It's all about mana. All about mana. Why these cards are the best cards. And that's why these free cards are so good. Why Guy's Cradle is so good. And that's why Jid is so good. Jid lets you play with no mana. This doesn't cost mana to activate. Okay, so then below this. That's why Palinchron is so good. Yeah. It's free. Free. Looming Grid Drake, Rewind, Snap. Okay. Time Spiral, Cloud Fairies, so on. You know, y'all love this card. What if I offered you 5 cards? What if I offered you 4 cards plus 4 points power and toughness? If this card was a 4 mana 4/4 that drew 4 cards, I think it would be more properly evaluated, because that's exactly what this card is. People don't seem to understand that. Yeah, we had a little over 7K earlier, actually. I don't have too much longer. I've got about 15 minutes. So these 2 cards, to me, are the best card advantage cards in the cube outside of Skullclamp. Ancestral gets the nod because it is so cheap, right? But if you're purely trying to get cards, these 2 are the best cards. And they're always a reason to be looking to play either red or... If you are playing mono white, splashing this is frequently trivial. And if you're playing Boros, then you could probably sneak that Escape to the Wilds in. And again, if we commit to the strategy of moving onto the board quickly and also interacting quickly. Where's Jailer? Oh yeah. Palace Jailer deserves to be in here. I'm actually going to put him up here. I think we'll get back to Jailer in a second. But if you take control of the game early, then people, when they see these cards, they say, well, this card doesn't affect the board and it costs 5 mana. The thing is, you've already done that work. So now you get to pay, now you get the payoff of taking control of the game, which is you get to skip a turn and draw an entire new hand of cards. And this card gets you additional land drop. This is, oh, cool. Yeah, this card really only costs 4 mana, draws you 5 cards. Gets you additional land drop. I've had many games where I escape and play all 5 cards in the same turn, like the turn I cast escape. And then, of course, Showdown. Notable combos with Showdown. Yeah, we'll move the Palace Jailer. I'm gonna have to backtrack a little bit, but whatever, deal with it. I think this is fair. Some combos with Showdown on the Scalds. If you find yourself playing Esper Sentinel, it's good with Esper Sentinel. Really good with Walking Ballista, because every spell you cast is a damage at that point. Anything else? It's good with creatures. Put them on creatures. No, it frequently gives you, not only does it give you more gas, but it also it increases your board position. So it's not true that this card doesn't affect the board, right? Yeah, to Jordan. It's always nice to have to Jordan around. All right, let's go back. This guy. Should this guy be higher? One of the things I've talked about today is that I think I lose a lot of matches because I don't take free win opportunities. And that I'm trying to beat the best things in the way that I have determined that I think is the best way to beat the best decks. My win rate is pretty good. It's not the best, but it's, you know, it's a strategy that's served me well, at least. And so what does that mean about Palace Jailer? I think Palace Jailer just clowns on really bad decks. They can't beat it. Hey, there was a time in the last 2 years or so that against blue-white, you just cast the Palace Jailer into nothing and then win the game because their deck doesn't do anything. The problem with Palace Jailer is that it's intensely vulnerable to a good deck. Because you're really setting up a house of cards, right? They could have a haste creature, they could have Questing Beast, Thundermaw, Hellkite. They could have like 2 removal spells in hand. It's easy to see the number of times that you can jail something and be fine. But man, the fail case is so abysmally bad. If you lose Monarch and can't get it back, then you're probably going to lose the game. It's almost impossible to come back from that. So against decks that are committed to the board and do play a lot of creatures, Jailer is much weaker. And it is also like a 4-mana 2/2. As a basic rule of thumb, if you're not getting your power and toughness equals the mana cost, that's not a very good card. You would be safe to never play 4-mana 2/2s in Vintage Cube, of which there's many. But this is the one exception. So don't play Braids. It's funny, but it's bad. Don't play Venser. Don't play Oracle Maltaya. Don't play Glenlander Archmage. There's a lot of these cards in the cube for some reason, and they're all bad. So they all are old, and they all have fond memories of them. They don't work. Yeah, to Jordan, it's the boomer cards, man. Okay, let's go on. I'm going to put Recurring Nightmare right here. This card was bad for like 15 years, but now is really good again. No, Glenlander is not good. Glenlander beats decks that are bad. Glenlander is bad against good decks. There's like blue cards are very good against other blue cards, but they're really not great against other cards. Glenlander. Nikki Two-Shoes, yeah, Boros is like the core. I don't think there's I would say Naya is like the shell, now that we added Minsc and Escape to the Wilds. Oracle Dia is cool, and it is good in green, but there's not a lot of payoff in this cube for landfall, and so the strengths of it are not being capitalized. One of the things about newer Magic is that you have to have your cards do a wide variety of things in order to be worth their mana investment. So just doing the one thing that it says it does is not enough. It needs to do like 2 other things. And so Oracle Dia just playing additional lands is not very good. If you had a highly redundant field to that deck, which is very difficult to put together in this cube, then no, we're not drafting again, Fuji. I've only got about 10 minutes left, and I gotta go. And if you had Felidar Retreat in the cube, if you had Hedron Crab in the cube, if you had, I don't know, other cards with the word landfall on them, I build this deck. I'll have to check it out later. So I gotta finish this up before in the next 10 minutes or so. Felidar Retreat's not in the cube anymore. Showing them on with the heavy hits here. Yeah, if you sack 10 lands, you get to dome them for 10. That'd be sick. But the point is, Oracle Dia just doing what it says is not enough. That it needs to enable other strategies. So you need to look at your cards not as being a singular payoff. The payoff on the card needs to be good enough on its own, but also it needs to work with the other cards extremely well. So Recurring Nightmare is like a pet card of mine because, you know, I was like 13 when this card came out, and the Survival Nightmare deck was one of the coolest decks. It was one of the first value reanimator decks. It's like a creature combo deck that had never really existed before. But it's so expensive, right? It takes so much mana to do something with this card. But that has changed because these cards are broken. Fury, Solitude, particularly Fury, Solitude, and Grief, right? There are 2 basic challenges with Recurring Nightmare. You need to have a creature in play, you need to have a creature in the graveyard. I don't like spending resources to put cards in my graveyard. I don't really care about discard outlays. Like I don't want to spend mana to do that. I don't want to play a bad card to put a card in my graveyard. We're already, you know, I get that Reanimator is using the graveyard for value, but discarding cards is bad, right? Like we want all of our cards, and we need, if we have to do a thing that is bad, we don't want to play other bad cards to do bad things. I don't think Grief is top 50, but like it's really good. So the pitch elementals, I don't like Mana Vault Falcon Eye. I don't think it's good. Because all these cards are too cheap. You don't get paid off for it. I don't think it's playable. So the pitch elementals lets you immediately put things in the graveyard. So you can play a 2-drop on turn 2, turn 3 pitch elemental, Recurring Nightmare, and get it back. Similarly, another thing so like that these specific cards breathe new life into Recurring Nightmare. Nightmare Fury, no one can play against that. This is my top 50 vintage cube cards list. So Nightmare is way better than it used to be, but don't fall in the trap of like trying to play Ravenous Chupacabra, because now again you're playing mediocre cards. Ravenous Chupacabra, notably a 4-mana 2/2. Don't play cards to try to, like, they cost too much mana. You need to do things for free, and it's not like just recurring killing one thing is not good enough. Other things with Recurring Nightmare that are good, actually, it's a card that we should put in here. This guy. This is the true sleeper hold here. There is a way to take infinite time locks without having time lock in your deck. If you have Voidwalker in play, and your opponent time locks, okay? So then you Voidwalk, choose their time lock, and then before you cast time lock, Recurring Nightmare, bring the Voidwalker back. Let's say a Bitter Blossom, okay? Then you cast their time lock, and then you just do that. You take infinite turns with your opponent's time lock. The combo of Recurring Nightmare and Voidwalker is pretty ridiculous. So I think, and also Voidwalker's 2 mana, right? So like it's important to have highly prioritized 2 mana cards. So therefore, if you're going to be playing black, you really should try to play it with Duffy Void. Yeah, Voidwalker Lurrus is also really powerful. Similarly with Lurrus, like Animate Dead is not a very good card, but if you have Lurrus, Animate Dead goes up a lot in value. I've had many games based around the value engine of Animate Dead and Lurrus, because you can recast things all the time. If you have a sacrifice outlet, then you can sack the thing that you Animate Dead, and then you get it back. Gonti's no longer in the cube, but there have been games where I like play Gonti every turn by sacrificing the Goblin Bombardment and then casting Animate Dead from the graveyard to bring back Gonti. Done that with opponents. Deranged Hermits before. You like Animate Dead their Deranged Hermit, don't pay Echo, and then you cast Animate Dead again and target their Deranged Hermit and just keep getting all these squirrels. That's a powerful combo. It's not good enough to be up here, but definitely worth it. Dismember and Duress fall in the same reasons that these cards are up here, except they're not as good, so they're not as high. Yeah, I think this seems good for Duretti. Duretti is no longer... Yeah, the incidental hate of Voidwalker is powerful. I'm missing some stuff here. Duretti's good, but people are playing less signets, so it's less good. But if you get Duretti out early, like turn 2, then it's really hard to play into it. The fact that it doesn't kill Planeswalkers makes it so much worse. Let's put Steel Seraph here. Really? No. Put K command. You guys ever passed a K command before? It's hard. I don't know. What needs to be said about this card? It does a lot for 3 mana. It's always a 2-for-1. Almost always an onboard 2-for-1 where you're trading up for mana and cards. That's stupid. Questing Beast here. No, Questing Beast here. Questing Beasts. This is the critical green card. We've talked about splashing Pest Infestation, but if you're playing a green deck, you need this card. Absolutely, 100%. Above everything else. Better than Nissa, it's better than Rathalos, it's better than Bird's Paradise, whatever. This is the best green card for your green deck. Because green cannot come back from behind. Once it gets behind, it loses the game. The only way it can come back from behind is to cast Greater Oath, right? And Beast is the only thing that you'll play, and all of a sudden you were losing and now you're winning. Because they can't block it, you kill their Planeswalker, and all of a sudden the game's in your favor. They can't attack you anymore. I used to think Tireless Tracker was up there, but it's not that good anymore. So this card is, it flips the table. Now you're winning when you were losing. I think this card's extraordinarily fair, but it is very, very good. Take command there. This card is overperformed. I don't have too much to say about it yet. It's kind of a 3-mana Elspeth. Means put her there. How do you rank Noble and Ignoble? Not this high, but I think they're very important. Below Questing Beast, but they're like maybe the next critical green cards. Of all the Boomer cards, this is the good one. This is the best white Planeswalker. This card says +1 destroy target Planeswalker. It says +1, establish board presence. And also kill your opponent in 4 turns. This is, I don't know. Gideon's fine, but this is the best white Planeswalker. And the more you play it, the more you'll see that your opponent vaporizes in the face of this card. And it's so hard to kill. It has so much loyalty, first of all. Urza Saga. It's good. It's overrated, but it's good. There's not a lot in this cube that you can fetch with it other than the best cards. So that's a downside to Urza Saga here. The fact that the cards you're going to fetch off it are the highly contested cards means that you're less likely to hit something. And if you don't get something off of this, it is a bad card. It's also harder to have a wide variety of artifacts in play without playing really bad cards like signets. So we don't want to play signets, and it's hard to have enough artifacts in play to make these constructs like bigger than 5/5. But 2 5/5s for one card is, I don't know. So Saga's good. The problem with Saga to a degree is that you go down in mana sources, and that's like a number one rule of mine is never go down in mana sources. So I don't like to play Horizon Lands, for instance, because you have to go down in mana, and you always want more mana. We'll always have things to do with our mana, and losing mana will always be bad. So don't. That is a downside here. Saga. Fracture Identity. I don't know. This card's pretty good, right? The problem is against all of these cards, it's not very good. Against the average deck you expect to face, which is playing Titans and 5-mana cards, like Fracture Identity went into the game by casting it, but against a good deck, I don't know. Fracture Identity is pretty good, but not great. Deals with the thing, it gives you their best thing. Plus 5 mana. It's okay. I think I would put Teferi higher. Teferi? Everyone hates it. I think this card doesn't do a lot, but if you happen to be playing counter magic, it does feel like you're cheating with this card in play. Yeah, it's not that this card doesn't have good targets. It's just, again, this is, top 50 cards, so it's still better than 500 cards. Chariot would be somewhere in this area. Retrofitter is good because it can be fetched off of Urza Saga. It's also good because a lot of these decks you should probably play 18 land. It just gives you something to do with your mana every turn. It's really like this. If your opponent goes Island Go and you play Retrofitter Foundry, it's, well, good luck. You're probably going to lose. And then Endurance is the last card. I don't know. People don't. I think this card will be less good when people start thinking about it, but at the moment, people just walk into it. There it is. This is the definitive top 50 cards. Undeniable, best possible. Go post it on Twitter. Got Flicker Wisp. Is it better than Endurance? Might be. I don't own a Flicker Wisp? Okay. Generates some Twitter controversy. Yeah, but the people that follow me already know that, I think. Swords is number 9. We take Path because we don't have swords. Solitude and Swords are my 2 top colored cards. Okay. No. Oko beats bad decks, but struggles against good decks. Again, if you just play to the board as much as possible, if you spend all your mana, and Oko will be a pain, but you'll find a way to beat it. All right, everyone. Thanks for hanging out.